Welcome guys to my first ever review. I've been doing this thing for a while right now. I've been reviewing like certain books I've read throughout the year on Instagram, busy writing a little paragraph or so in the caption, and I thought, let me take this up a step. So over the last couple of months I've been working to get the right equipment, the right camera, tripod, etc. And here I am today doing my first ever book review. And this is going to be going everywhere, so you'll see it on TikTok, you'll see it on YouTube. But for my first book that I ever wanted to review, it had to be, special. It couldn't just be any other book. This is my first time sitting in front of the camera in a long, long, long time. So it had to be a special, special, special book. And the book I decided to do was The Will of the Many. My first encounter with this book actually was about 3 or so years ago, around about there. It was just a random night, working, the closing shift of the store, logging on to Goodreads, see what's popping, as many of us have done. But I stumbled upon The Will of the Many. And I was like, oh, a sci-fi based around, Roman mythology, some of the aspects, stuff like that. As a Percy Jackson fan, the die-hard Percy Jackson fan, I was like, this sounds amazing. I read the synopsis, I was like, oh, this does look interesting. The only issue at the time was I couldn't get it at local retailers, local bookstores, and I wasn't really making that type of money to still order it, overseas or online and stuff like that. So it passed my mind completely. And then about a year ago, somebody was talking about it again, and I just happened to mention it, This was a book that I was hella looking forward to, that gripped me the second I saw it on Goodreads, and I just never got it. And then a special somebody heard me talking about it, and for my Christmas gift, I got it. Now just looking at it, you can tell that The Will of the Many has that Roman touch to it. But if you pick it up to read it just for that, I don't think you're gonna love it. So I've come to realize, because I'm not really a sci-fi reader, I think the only sci-fi book or legit sci-fi book I've read is Game of Thrones, and I was meaning to actually read the entire series, but I just never got to it. But I'm not really counting romantasy, because at the time, and even now, I'm reading a lot of like non-fiction, book talk, romantasy. But to me, in my eyes, it's more like a byproduct of book talk. So I don't really have a lot of sci-fi knowledge, or by the time I started reading this, at least I didn't have a lot of sci-fi knowledge. I have come to realize that the addition or the inclusion of Roman mythology or Roman aspects in sci-fi is actually quite common, considering now that I'm currently reading Red Rising. For this book particularly, I would actually say it's more of an undertone, because you're following a character and you're following a story. It has every single good aspect to it, tension, mystery, jeopardy, growth, etc. And the only things that are Roman are the surroundings, the background stuff that's happening, how the society is arranged. The magic system kind of takes a bit from Roman mythology, but there isn't the inclusion of gods or demigods or myths and stuff like that a lot of other books have, like Red Rising, for example. But it is there, and it's kind of what drew me in, being a big mythology fan of myself. But from the get-go, from the first chapter, it was Viz that set me. Now this book is like 400-500 pages long, but the age-old story about how a book that is congested or it looks massive is actually has so much going on and so much going for it that it really can be read within a week. And it moves way faster than books that are 300 pages, smaller, paperback. They look smaller. But when you compare the content, you find yourself reading this one way, way quicker. I guarantee you. And it's literally all because of Viz. Viz, an orphan, he's working at one of the hierarchies, jails. And you get a sense of that he's a lot more. He's just a security guard working alongside his warden. But the way he interacts in that first chapter, you get a sense, okay, he's a lot smarter, he's a lot stronger than he actually is. But he's downplaying it. You know, he doesn't want to give too much away. He doesn't want to reveal that he understands how this game works. He understands how these people talk. You get the sense that that is from trauma. Immediately a complicated character, and you feel that this boy's been through some things. And of course, that night in particular on his shift, a man comes to the door and he needs to see one of the prisoners in this particular jail. Viz helps him out. Something goes wrong during the interrogation. Not all too bad because Viz is there to save the day. But as soon as that guy leaves, Viz is happy because he doesn't want anything to do with the hierarchy, the cats in society. He just wants to be anonymous, he wants to be forgettable, and he wants to eventually escape. But a day later, he appears again at his orphanage looking for an adopted son to send to the hierarchy's elite academy in order to investigate the death of his older brother. Now I know what you're thinking. I have come to know that this is actually quite a common trope. The fact that there's always a protagonist, male or female, that comes out of obscurity, you know, out from trauma, has been struggling or etc. And for whatever reason, they have been chosen in this elite society out of hundreds of thousands of like kids. And they need to now, with their abilities that they have from surviving in the struggle, go to this academy where the elite are and kind of figure out what's happening. And I know it's quite common because then I need to go and they need to go say they end up saving the world, etc., etc. You know, because we all know Hunger Games and the book I'm reading right now, Red Rising. But the beauty of this book is that it's straightforward. You are immediately attached to Viz in the way that James Islington writes him. You're immediately supporting him, growing with him, seeing his flaws in the way that he conducts himself and the reasons why he conducts himself the way he does. And obviously throughout the story, you're going with him. You're enjoying the challenges, you're enjoying the tension, the secrets that pop up about himself, about the man Alcicer's family history, about how this cat in society is built and worked. It is literally 400 or 500 pages, pure, straightforward, unputdownable, if that is a word, of a book. You know, you want Viz to be there. You want Viz to survive. You believe Viz that is going to survive. And I know that there is like I said, there's like 500 pages, but when there's jeopardy on the line, you feel it. You will feel that you're like on page 100 and Viz is challenged in such a way that he might possibly not make it. You do wonder, like, wait, but there is like 300 other pages. Is this man gonna die here? Because you do feel it. You feel it in every single page, in every single chapter. There's not a dull moment. There's not a moment that doesn't keep you entertained, keep you invested. There's not a moment that you feel that Viz is okay, that it's guaranteed that he's gonna make it towards the end. Now this simply is really the best book I've ever read. And I think all of us really know that moment when you're deep in a book, probably chapter 5, 20, something like that, and you read a page and you're like, what? And you have to close it to take a break, and you just look around like, yeah. And then you jump right back in because you need to know what happens. But this book is full of that. It literally, of course, only gets complicated towards the end. And that is, of course, because this is actually part of a series. So James Islington is writing a trilogy called, obviously, the Hierarchy series. And this is book 1. Book 2 was recently released, The Strength of the Few. And I've already read it, so spoiler alert, that is obviously going to be the next video. But there is 3 books to the series. He is already working on the 3rd book. So obviously it's going to get more complicated and everything as you go along. But this book is genuinely amazing. And because the 2nd book recently came out, I felt the need to reread it. Not because I didn't know or couldn't remember what happened. This book was so amazing that I was literally recounting every single twist and chapter to people around me so that they can hear how invested I'm in this book. Like, I couldn't get on the train, I couldn't sit down at lunch on shift without reading this book. I reread it because I wanted to know what else I missed. Because when you read books like this that are mysteries, with so much challenges, with so many secrets flying around, and obviously with so many twists. You think you know what's happening. You're with Viz and you're trying to work out constantly these different puzzles, these different tasks, these different elements, and you're trying to solve, all the things with him, alongside him. But when you read the ending of a book like this, you're thinking, what? The second book can't come out fast enough. And then the second thing you're thinking is, how much does that ending play to what you have been given, perhaps in like chapter 5, chapter 20, something like that. And I think that's kind of like the beauty of this book. It makes you want to reread it. And it's such an easy reread. I reread it again in a week. But as I reread it, all these little pieces of information that they dotted around the book that you kind of thought, okay, this kind of makes no sense, because there are a lot of like question marks and things that, as you know the ending, you can kind of go back and kind of be like, oh, maybe because of the ending, this kind of ties into this, and now this gives me a theory about Viz, a theory about Alcisa, about his friends, about the academy, about the Catan society in general. And the beauty of that is that that does nothing to take away from the second book. Now to my more spoilery side of the review. I have tried before to read sci-fi books in general, and a lot of the things that sci-fi books don't really do well is that they kind of use the first or second chapter, but sometimes the first chapter, and then they dump like characters, they dump the magic system, and then they dump the society, and then that kind of puts me off the book, because obviously that's a lot of information. You're getting the characters, the different names, which obviously is also like taken from so many societies and stuff as well, because every naming system in every sci-fi book is also complicated, because these are names that you've never heard before. Obviously, like Viz, Darrow, Katniss, obviously Katniss, but Katniss, Zayden, all these names are names that you haven't heard really before, that you kind of hear the first time in like the first chapter, and then they explain like the Catan hierarchy as well in the first chapter of the book, and that kind of always puts me off, and that is something I didn't really experience with it. From the get-go, I knew the harder names, which also have like a Roman-esque element to them, but I kind of grasped that way quicker. And the magic system as well, it isn't complicated by any stretch of the imagination. You know that will is the strength, the dreams, the ambition of people, and you get to see the effect of that when it is taken away, ceded away to the higher ups of society. And you can see how people live with their will being ceded away. And you get to see the same thing when you view those that receive the will, the higher ups, those that are in the Senate, those that are in military governance, religion. And that was perfect for me, that in itself. And I understood the Catan society as well perfectly. It is literally just a society that needed to constantly expand itself and constantly conquer other countries and other continents, other islands, other kingdoms, in order to continuously retain power. Even the subject of the cataclysm, which plays a bigger part in the strength of the second book, is quite simple to understand. It is an event like the dinosaurs that we all know. They wiped out everybody 300 to 400 years ago in this book. And that's about it. And that's all we know. That's why Wood is so simple to kind of grasp, I feel, is because the fact that all of this happened 300 years ago, and that those that are existing now are kind of only rediscovering will at this point. Their use of will in terms of machinery, technology, and in each other is so rudimentary compared to those that were existing 300 years ago. So that kind of also leaves a mystery that is then not really solved, but it's further attention and further light is illuminated on it in the second book. And then the academy. I love that it was 6 months of Viz's journey that felt that you honestly could have looked at and you were like, that didn't happen in a couple of years' time. The idea of the different classes, Callidius, Idian, Aquia, Indel, Irol, and Missa, these are all characters that you are now getting to know, that you get to experience this life with. You see their personalities that just aren't one-sided characters. Everybody has such depth, such meaning to the story. And then you, as you progress through the story, you are absolutely shocked to find out that, oh, Callidius has this role to play. Idion has that role to play. Iroh, who is basically always glowering at Viz, is suddenly such an important character. And that for me is also something that kept me invested. Because I was constantly thinking, oh, he's going to get with Acquia. Because I wanted that little romance. I wanted to see him happier. And I wanted to see him somehow integrate a bit more into the society and be forced to kind of like grapple with that. And then he was grappling with that. Just with Missa. It's kind of like all these aspects that you think of yourself, you think yourself when you read the book, it's kind of given to you by James. And every plot twist, every inclusion, it blew my mind every single time. It blew my mind every single time. And at one point, I even forgot that Veritas was the bad guy. Because as much as it's portrayed in the beginning by Alcisa and by his family, that Veritas joined religion, and religion is doing something that could pose a threat to the military. You kind of get the glimpse that as time goes on, as Viz investigates the ruins and the labyrinth, the original labyrinth, that all that stuff kind of fades to the background. Because we don't know what Veritas is doing. We just know that these are ruins, pre-cataclysm ruins that have magic in them that we have never seen, that have dead students in them that we've never seen, that has a labyrinth that needs to be run with absolute jeopardy that we've never seen. And this needs to happen for Viz to even just give Alcisa something. And that's the beauty of it. You give in so many enemies, you know, the head of military, Indal's father, you give in the Angus, you give in Sedocia, Relucia, you give in Veritas, you give in so many things that by the end, not the end of the book, but kind of like halfway through the book, you're kind of just hoping Viz is going to survive, because any one of these people or any one of these different things could mean him harm. And I loved every single second of it. That's why I loved rereading this, because it gave me, the ending of this book gave me more knowledge of certain things that James was dropping in certain other parts of the ruin runs, of conversations he heard with in the military, all these other things from like specifically with the Angus and Relucia and Sedocia, all these different things that kind of been like, oh, now that I know the ending, does this mean X, Y, and Z? Oh my gosh, now I'm really excited for book 2, because book 2 is now gonna answer me all these things. Oh, of course, it's a trilogy, so that didn't necessarily happen, but it answered a lot. Now for my final little bit before I end this review, because I can really go on talking about this book forever. Again, I love this book so much, and when I got it, obviously this is the hardcover version of it. You get a paperback version as well. It's kind of orange, the colors are kind of inverted. You get like the inserts as well, the map, as many sci-fi books do have. But the joy of being a reader is that you want every single edition, you want every single version of a book. This was the only book I kind of really wanted it, but I didn't want the paperback. I kind of wanted the more sci-fi with the addition, I think, of the transvect flying over the cities and stuff like that. But I never really got into it because I had this. And again, at the time, I didn't really think, okay, I have adult money, I can kind of go and buy more things. But as a very special somebody, knew I loved this book so much that they bought exactly the same edition of this book, and they had it rebound. The cover taken off, the book taken out, made in a special 101 edition of this book. And this is it. My 101 edition of The Will of the Many. The Roman, I believe this is actually the Greek, a Greek pattern symbol that's on here, but obviously because of the Roman theme, the crumbling pillars and everything like that. OG, kind of same inscription kind of in the beginning of the book on the original, but in gilded gold with white, black, a famous Idion quote, if you know, you know, of course. And inside, the OG map and everything, but custom put in, and you know, different symbols and artwork that people have done, which is kind of the beauty of being a part of a book community. And finding that book a couple of years later after it's come out is that people have done their own their own research, but their own artwork of things in the book. You know, when people don't know how to really like envision the transvect, so they're able to kind of like generate that image for themselves and share it. Because that's also what's in this book, you know, different outlayers and different chapters halfway through the book, kind of in the correct places, of course. But you know, the incident of the arena with Melior, the running of the labyrinth, etc. And of course, the cat in society, or you know, more strength of the few kind of, now that I know actually, the strength of the few-esque picture in the back. But I love the series. If you love books, if you're interested in following me and wanting to see me review your books, I read a lot more than sci-fi, of course, non-fiction, African fiction, book talk especially. If you want me to see me or review one of you guys' books, kind of talk about it here, you know, make our little bit of community down below, then please hit that follow, hit that subscribe. If you just want to tell me how I did, if I am going crazy, if I'm an avid book lover, etc., etc., please let me know. But otherwise, I hope you enjoy your day, and I'll catch you here for the next one.